Hi, everybody. Carrie Arblaster here, the Assistant Vice President of External Affairs, and I am joined by the Spencer Gross, your Director of Local Government Affairs. We're here to bring you a post-primary election update or report, as the slide says. But before we get started, Spencer is going to just briefly remind you about what we just experienced with regards to our primary last month. So Spencer, go ahead.
Right, so the day before the March 17th primary, the Ohio Department of Health issued an order to close all of the polling places in the state. This did not cancel the primary election. Rather, it sort of created a situation where the General Assembly would then have to figure out, okay, when are we going to have our primary election then? There was a little bit of a back and forth. The Secretary of State's office was saying one date, the House and Senate were saying another date. Ultimately, they came to the conclusion that April 28th would be a good date for us to have the primary election day. You could submit absentee ballots up to that date, up to the 7:30 p.m. That you see there. The voter registration deadline still stood, so if you hadn't registered to vote by February 18th for that March 17th primary, you wouldn't have been permitted to vote in this extended election. And ballots can actually still be continued to be counted for the next couple of days here. This May 6th, as we record this video, they can count these ballots until the end of the week. And there are still a number of races out there that we'll actually touch on later that are kind of still in the process of being counted.
Very good. It was an interesting primary, no doubt, and we'll see certainly what the general election holds, because I think some of the same issues are going to be present. But until then, we're going to run through a handful of notable races, and we've got them divided by location, if you will. So first, we're going to touch on some of the congressional primaries that took place here in Ohio that we found interesting. So first is the 1st Congressional District, where incumbent Steve Chabot resides. If you recall from the last couple elections, Congressman Chabot has been under fire. Hamilton County is increasingly trending blue, and it is a belief by the Democrats in Washington, D.C. that this district is certainly in play. So you can see on the Democratic side, there was an interesting primary between Nikki Foster and Kate Schroeder. Ultimately, Kate Schroeder won out. You can see it was a strong percentage there with 67+% of the votes. Kate is an interesting candidate. She is a Cincinnati native. She has an MBA from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania and has been a longtime healthcare advocate. She worked for a while in DC as a consultant and healthcare advocate there. And she was also the director of health in Zambia for the Clinton Foundation for 2 years in Africa. She's a cancer survivor, so for her, healthcare is very personal, but she's come back to Cincinnati, currently lives there with her husband and her children, and will be the person that Steve Chabot squares off against in November. So an interesting race to watch. The next one, again, on the Democratic side is the 3rd Congressional District, which is currently occupied by the wonderful Representative Joyce Beatty. She's been in that seat for 7 years. She's an important member of Congress and an important member of the Central Ohio delegation. She serves on the Financial Services Committee. She's also known to be very willing to work across the aisle and has actually formed really great relationships with the other delegates in Central Ohio. She was challenged by Morgan Harper, a young African-American woman from the Columbus area, but an interesting candidate, no doubt. She has an MA from Princeton and a JD from Stanford. She did some work in Washington, D.C. with the CFPB. She was there for 3 years. She came back to the Columbus area and ran on a platform of workers' rights and seeing herself as the candidate kind of the new generation that needed to be present in DC politics to talk about defending workers. So this was an interesting primary, given that Representative Beatty has been there for a while and is very well liked within the community. And you can see that she succeeded at 68.29%. So Congresswoman Beatty will be Congresswoman again come November. But again, an interesting race to watch. So the last one here is for the 13th Congressional District. This is currently held by Representative Tim Ryan. As you may or may not know, that area of the state, the Mahoning Valley, up by the Youngstown area, is trending red. We had a lot of counties up in that neck of the woods go for Trump last go around. I think that Republicans see this congressional seat as potentially weak, although Congressman Ryan has been there for quite some time. So there was an interesting primary on the Republican side. You can see there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 candidates running. The winner in this race was Christina Hagan, a former Ohio House representative. She served in the House District, 50th District, for 7 years and took that district after her father left the chamber. So her family has had a longstanding presence in Ohio politics. She's an interesting candidate. She comes from kind of more far right than moderate for sure, and she certainly will make the race in November between Congressman Ryan interesting. So those are the 3 races that we wanted to highlight for you on the congressional side. We're going to move into the Senate, and Spencer's going to kick us off.
Thanks, Carrie. A few of the notable state Senate races that we were watching this time around. Down in my neck of the woods, Butler County, we had State Representative Candace Keller, State Representative George Lang, and Westchester Township Trustee Lee Wong, all vying for the 4th Senate District that is currently being vacated by the term-limited Bill Coley. This was a, kind of a classic clash between what some might say is kind of the more business-minded sort of Chamber of Commerce type Republican in George Lang, and kind of the more tilted toward the right, social conservative type of Republican in Candace Keller. Lee Wong was most noted for campaigning on a Segway that he would ride around on. And as you can see there, George Lang was able to pull out a pretty convincing victory, gaining almost 50% of the vote down there. And again, just there's a really interesting race whenever you have kind of that clash of the Republican Party going on. You have the Senate District 6, which is part of Montgomery County. You had Representative Niraj Antani, who's been a great friend of the Realtors, running against Greg Robinson and Rachel Selby. This was interesting because the term-limited Peggy Lehner, the state senator who's represented that district for the past 8 years, actually threw her support behind Rachel Selby. In the end, it turned out that Niraj Antani has just built a big following down there, has done a really great job for himself and kind of making a name for himself, and was able to pull out a very, very convincing victory, getting almost 65% of the vote in that primary.
So we have a couple more races here. This one was a primary on the Republican side for Senate District 14, which is Adams, Brown, Claremont, Scioto counties, and part of Lawrence. This was an interesting race. The Republican Senate caucus spent big here to defend Senator Terry Johnson. He was challenged by Dave, is it Ubli? I can't remember how to say it. Ubli, yeah, is that right? I don't know, but it was interesting. So basically what you had here, he's a candidate out of Claremont County. Claremont County, I think, feels at times that they are left out of the conversation about who should represent them, and they went in hard for this gentleman. This gentleman is a buffalo farmer and also a convicted criminal. And in fact, he currently is back in jail in Claremont County under mail fraud charges. So again, a very interesting race. If you lived in any of those counties, lots of chatter, lots of back and forth. Terry Johnson had a resounding win in the primary with 76% of the vote, so he is safe, and we'll move on to the general. But again, just another interesting race to watch. A lot of money spent against an unusual challenger. So there you have it. Next, we have the primary race that took place again on the Republican side for Senate District 26. Here you had State Representative Bill Reinecke running against Melissa Atkinson. Bill has been a longtime friend of the Realtors as he's been in the House, has a fantastic relationship with the Fire and Loans Board, which is where his House district is located. The Senate District incorporates 4 of our boards, all of which decided to support Bill in his primary. So they took that request to the RPEC trustees, who have been incredibly incredibly supportive of Bill in his primary race against Melissa Atkinson. Melissa Atkinson, if you are not familiar with her, is a fixture, if you will, in Ohio Republican politics. She is more on the extreme side, and in fact has been at the State House a lot lately, protesting the social distancing and quarantine policies put into place by the DeWine administration. And there was some concern in this race that sentiment would catch fire and perhaps grow Atkinson's ability to beat Reineke in the primary. Although, as you can see, Reineke came across strong with 62+% of the votes and will go on to run in the general, which is wonderful for us. That is who we wanted to see get across that line, and we're incredibly excited to have Bill Reineke join the Senate Republican caucus. So another interesting race. We're going to move into this one. It is on the R side, but touches on the D side as well, and I'll explain. So here you have Senate District 32, which is up in Ashtabula, why can't I say that? Trumbull, and part of, yeah, you're laughing at me. We've all been at home too long. Here you had Sandra O'Brien run against Ken Polk, or is it Polky? Do you know Polk? Polk?
It's Polky.
Polky, we'll go with Polky. Sandra ultimately won with 69+% of the vote. The reason why this is interesting is because she will now be paired up against incumbent state senator Sean O'Brien. So you have S. O'Brien on either side of the ticket here. And I should note too that Senate District 32 has been identified as the top potential pickup item by the Republican caucus. Why, you ask? Because again, these are counties that traditionally in the past have been reliable blue counties, but in the age of Trump have swiftly moved to the Republican side of the aisle. So it'll be interesting to see. Sean O'Brien came to the Senate from the House. He's been present in Ohio politics for quite some time. So he's certainly not someone to write off. But at the same time, when you look at the names and then basically being the same, you do wonder how that's going to impact voters and their ability to retain who it is that they're hoping to actually vote for. So we will see. That general election race is going to be interesting. So I think we have one. Yeah, go ahead.
In there.
Do what?
I'm sure there will be no confusion there.
No confusion, none whatsoever. What will be interesting to see is how they try to differentiate themselves on signs. You know, like what do they do to help people remember who they are? So we'll have to keep track of that and take some pictures to share with you in November when we go over the final races. Okay, so the last one in the Senate was a primary on the Democratic side for Senate District 16, which is Western Franklin County. So we've talked a lot about the Youngstown area, that portion of the state, and how it's trending red. What you're seeing in Franklin County and a little bit in Hamilton, which we touched on with the Shabbat race, is a decided move towards blue. So the Franklin County delegation has slowly been making its way to have Democrats representing it rather than Republicans. This is one of the last remaining Senate seats in that area. It's currently held by Senator Stephanie Coonsey. And so she will be facing Crystal Lett. You can see Crystal ran in a 5-way primary and came out very, very strong with 78+% of the vote. So this is going to be an interesting race, I think, for Senator Coonsey. They're very similar in makeup and who they are, and they kind of even look alike. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes. But this is definitely a potential pickup for Democrats, much like the Republicans see a potential pickup in Senate District 32 for them. So who knows? Maybe they'll swap. Who knows? So, all right, I think we're going to move into the House, and Spencer is going to kick it off here for us.
Yeah, a couple state house races that we had on. One was to replace a longtime friend of the Realtors, Fred Strayhorn in Montgomery County. He is term limited, so you had a few folks running for that seat. Ultimately, Willis Blackshear Jr. Was victorious in this primary. He had a very convincing victory. He is a staffer in the Montgomery County Auditor's Office and was a PAF supported candidate. So we're happy to see Willis victorious there. Lastly, House District 63, which is again in Trumbull County, Gil Blair, who was appointed to run in the state house and fill that seat. Actually had to run for election for the very first time, and had a primary challenger, but really did a great job of securing a huge win there. He will have to run for re-election in an area, again, as Carrie has mentioned, is trending more red. So we'll see, when he has to run in a general election for the first time, how he's able to fare in November.
Very good. All right, we're going to move into some fun facts. You saw in the earlier slide, Spencer had a picture of his dog. I turned a picture of a cat. It is not my cat, but I am a cat lover. So I have lots of them, but that's not my cat, but I think super adorable. So we're going to run through some numbers, just some interesting facts here. So if you can see here that you have almost a third of the House chamber with candidates who are not running against any opposition. So there's 16 House Republicans who will not have a challenger in the fall, 7 House Democrats who will not have a challenger in the fall, which is interesting. On the Senate side, you do have all candidates with an opponent. So just fun fact there. We're going to dive in just quickly to some of the campaign account numbers. So the last filing was in March. So these numbers probably have changed since then. We've had a couple of months here. But as you can see, that first is the Senate Republican caucus with $2.1 million cash on hand, where you have the Senate Democrats with $221,000. So quite a difference there between the two caucuses. On the House side, the House Republican caucus is sitting with $1.3 million, while the Democrats have $589,000. So again, quite some disparity there, definitely more so on the Senate side. A quick look at Ohio Supreme Court races. So if you weren't aware, there's 2 Supreme Court races that will be on the ballot this November. They are important to both parties, so I think you will see a lot of attention paid and money spent, not only by the candidates themselves, but the state parties to try to get their candidate across the line. Sharon Kennedy is the Republican squaring off against John O'Donnell. You can see there, she kind of takes the cake out of all of them with over $600,000 raised, cash on hand. John O'Donnell has $42,000 cash on hand. The other Ohio Supreme Court race will be between Justice Judy French and former Secretary of State Jennifer Brunner. I should say Sharon Kennedy is a current justice as well. Judy French currently has just over $400,000 cash on hand, while Jennifer Brunner has raised almost $140,000 cash on hand. So again, races to watch. Money isn't everything, but a lot of time it is a good indication of who's going to be able to talk more to voters. So we'll move into general election races just briefly. I mean, there's a lot that we could go in here, but a couple races to watch. We already pointed out Senate District 16 between incumbent Senator Stephanie Kunze and now her opponent, Crystal Lett. And again, Senate District 32, that O'Brien-Bryan race will be interesting to watch. And like we said, for Democrats, they're hoping to pick up 16, and for Republicans, they're hoping to pick up 32. So who knows if they just swap or not. We will find out soon enough. On the House side, you have House District 43, which was held by a Democrat for a very, very long time. They lost it, I think, 2 or 3 cycles ago. It is now an open seat, so the incumbent Republican is not running. You've got Amy Cox running against Mr. Creech. So we'll see. Cox is the Democrat, Creech is the Republican, and I think Democrats are hopeful that they pick that back up. Representative Greenspan has been a long friend of the Realtors, and he currently holds House District 16. This is one that he is going to have to defend. He is in an area that is about 50-50 split, and so he's constantly in a place of defense, so we'll see how he holds out this election. And then, of course, you have the 5 seats that House Democrats picked up 2 years ago that they're going to need to defend. So it's House District 19 with current Representative Lightbody, House District 21 with current Representative Liston, House District 24 with current Representative Russo, House District 28 with current Representative Miranda, and House District 37 with current Representative Weinstein. 4 of those 5 representatives are women, so it'll be interesting to see if they're able to hold their seats in 2020. Spencer, your turn.
Sure. So we had a number of issues mobilization races this cycle, and like all the other races, were sort of upended with all of the COVID-19 stuff that happened, and how that race was changed. We had 13 ballot issues, 8 local associations that you can see there, really across the state. It was a great kind of geographic diversity of the state. Wayne Holmes, Licking County, Springfield, Stark County, Midwestern Ohio, Lake and Geauga, Southern Ohio, and the Cincinnati Area Board of Realtors. All participated this time. $22,000 total investment that we had in issues mode. So it was a great cycle for us. And as I said earlier, boards of elections still have a couple of days to count ballots, and I think they're gonna take those days. On one such issue, the Hamilton County issue 7. This is a huge deal for the Cincinnati area. It's a ballot issue that would raise the county sales tax by 0.8% to pay for improved Metro bus service and infrastructure projects. You can see the numbers there. I mean, 130,000 plus votes cast. It's a difference of about 600 votes currently. And that was on kind of the unofficial results on election night. There were still a few thousand ballots that were out that had yet to be counted. So, you know, I think some of the backers of issue 7, including the Cincinnati Area Board of Realtors, are hopeful that this will pass. But when you have something that tight, and you have, you know, the number of ballots that are still out there, anything can happen. The Southern Ohio Association of Realtors helped the New Richmond School District pass their first levy in decades. The last time they passed a levy was in 1977. So a great job here by SOAR. This passed by less than 200 votes. You know, you'll see a trend with some of these races that they were just so razor thin when you had a lower turnout due to the all-mail election. You know, you have a lot of really tight races, and the support from our realtor associations, you know, really helped move the needle in a lot of these cases. The Lake and Geauga Association of Realtors helped the Willoughby East Lake schools pass their levy. It was a nice job there, 10-year, 4.94 mil additional operating levy. Moore helped the St. Paris, Village of St. Paris, pass their streets levy. This was a really great thing. You see there passed by 56 votes. That is just, that's real tight in elections. And, you know, it's gonna bring a lot of much needed revenue for street repairs. You see a photo there from St. Paris that was in the local newspaper. There was an opinion piece as to why this was needed. And Moore did a really great job coming in and helping them out. And, you know, I have no doubt that when you're talking about a margin of 56 votes, any level of support helps move the needle in the right direction there. The Stark County Association of Realtors helped pass a couple of levies in their area. One was a parks levy. You see there the little frog logo. That's a great parks logo. I love that. They also helped pass the Perry Schools and Canton City Schools levy. And lastly, the Wayne Holmes Association helped pass the Holmes County Training Center levy. This is a great levy for the operation of developmental programs and services. Really goes toward their developmental disabilities facility, which is just a great thing. There's a lot of local support for this levy, and the Wayne Holmes Association certainly helped out in that effort too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, guys, unless anything changes, those are the results. We'll certainly update you and the website on the Cincinnati race. I think that was really the only one that was too close to call.
Yeah.
But as always, there's our contact information. If you need anything, please reach out, and we certainly will be back, because even though the year feels odd because of COVID, it is a general election year. It is a presidential election year, and we are going to be very busy over the next couple of months. So any final words, Spencer?
No, thank you very much for watching. And as Carrie said, we'll keep you updated.
Bye.
Thanks.